Imagine waking up in a medieval town. The streets are narrow, the air smells like smoke, animals, sewage, and damp wood. Church bells are ringing in the distance. At first, you think it is just another morning. Then you notice something strange. The market is almost empty. Doors are shut. People are whispering. A cart rolls slowly through the street, and on it are bodies covered in cloth. Then someone says the words everyone fears. The sickness is here. You are not in a movie. You are not playing a game. You are in Europe, during the Black Death. And now the question is simple. Could you survive? At first, surviving the Black Death sounds like it should be easy. Just avoid sick people. Stay clean. Stay inside. Do not touch anything dangerous. But in the 1300s, none of that was simple. People did not understand bacteria. They did not know exactly how the disease spread. They did not have antibiotics. They did not have modern hospitals. They did not have masks, gloves, disinfectant, or emergency alerts. They had fear, rumours, prayers, bad smells, crowded homes, fleas, rats, dirty streets, and death moving faster than anyone could explain. The Black Death was one of the most terrifying pandemics in human history. It spread through Europe in the mid-1300s and wiped out entire families, villages, and neighborhoods. In some places, people died so quickly that there was not enough time to bury them properly. Imagine living in a town where yesterday your neighbor was healthy. Today, he has a fever. Tomorrow, he is dead. Then someone in his family gets sick. Then someone next door. Then someone across the street. And nobody knows who is next. That is what made the Black Death so terrifying. It was not just the disease, it was the uncertainty. You did not know where it came from. You did not know who carried it. You did not know if leaving town would save you or kill you faster. You did not know if touching a door, buying bread, or helping a sick family member would be the thing that ended your life. So let's place you there. You wake up in the year 1348. You are an ordinary person, not a king, not a noble, not a doctor, just someone living in a crowded medieval town. You have a small home, a little food, maybe a few coins, and almost no real protection. The first thing you would need to survive is information. But information in medieval Europe moved slowly. There was no phone, no news broadcast, no internet, no official health website. Most people heard news from travelers, merchants, priests, messengers, or gossip. By the time you heard that plague was in the next town, it might already be in yours. A merchant could bring it, a ship could bring it, a traveler could bring it, a flea could bring it, a rat could bring it. And once people started dying, fear spread even faster than the disease. Some people believed the plague came from bad air. Some thought it was punishment from God. Some blamed the position of the planets. Some blamed strangers. Some blamed poisoned wells. And when people are terrified, they do not always become smarter. They become desperate. That would be one of your biggest dangers. Not just the plague itself, but panic. If you lived in a city, your chances would probably be worse. Cities were crowded, people lived close together, animals were nearby, waste was everywhere, water was not always clean, food markets brought crowds, ships brought goods, and goods brought pests. A medieval city could be exciting in normal times, but during plague, it could become a trap, so your first instinct might be to run, leave the city, go to the countryside, find somewhere isolated. That sounds smart, but it is not that easy. Roads were dangerous, bandits existed, travelers could be blamed for spreading disease, villages might not welcome strangers, and if you were already infected, but did not know it yet, you could bring death with you. Even if you were healthy, people might not believe you. Imagine walking up to a village gate during the Black Death and saying, "Do not worry, I am fine." Would they trust you? Probably not. They might see you as a threat, and honestly, they might be right. So if you wanted to survive, your best move would be to leave early, very early, before the plague reached your town, before roads became dangerous, before everyone panicked, before villages started turning away outsiders. But that creates another problem. How would you know when to leave? If you leave too early, you abandon your home, job, food, and community for a threat that might never come. If you leave too late, you may already be surrounded by infection. This is the nightmare of the Black Death. Every decision has a risk. Stay in town and you might catch it. Run away and you might carry it. Help your family and you might die with them. Avoid your family and you might survive with guilt for the rest of your life. Now let's talk about what the disease looked like. The symptoms could be horrifying: fever, chills, weakness, pain, vomiting, dark patches on the skin, and swollen lumps called buboes, often around the neck, armpits, or groin. These swellings could become extremely painful. For many people, once symptoms appeared, death could come quickly, sometimes in just a few days. Now imagine seeing that happen without understanding what bacteria are. You would not think, this is an infection caused by Yersinia pestis. You might think the air is cursed. You might think God is angry. You might think the world is ending. And to be fair, for many people, it probably felt like the world was ending. Church bells rang constantly. Funerals became overwhelming. Priests got sick from caring for the dying. Doctors were limited by the medical knowledge of the time. Families were torn apart. Some people stayed and cared for loved ones. Others ran. Some locked themselves indoors. Others drank, partied, and acted like nothing mattered because death seemed unavoidable. So, what would you do? Let's say you decide to survive. Your first rule would be distance. Stay away from crowds. Avoid markets. Avoid sick homes. Avoid funerals. Avoid travelers. Avoid shared bedding. Avoid rats, fleas, and dirty clothing when possible. But in medieval life, avoiding all of that would be extremely hard. You still need food. You still need water. You still need firewood. You may still need to work. You may live with family members in a small space. You may share walls with neighbors. You may not have the money to escape. Survival is easier when you are rich. That was true then, and it is true now. A wealthy noble might leave the city for a country estate. They might bring servants, food, horses, guards, and supplies. They could isolate in comfort. But an ordinary person? You probably did not have a private estate waiting for you. You had responsibilities, you had limited food, and if you stopped working, you might starve. That is what makes the Black Death such a brutal survival scenario. You are not choosing between safety and danger. You are choosing between different kinds of danger. Disease on one side, hunger on the other, isolation on one side, poverty on the other, fear outside, fear inside. Now let's say you leave the city and reach a small village. This might improve your chances. Open air, fewer people, less crowding, more distance. But the countryside was not magically safe. The plague reached villages too, and small communities could be devastated. If enough people died, fields went unworked, animals wandered, food production collapsed, families disappeared. The normal rhythm of life broke apart. Even surviving the disease did not mean your problems were over. What if the blacksmith died? What if the miller died? What if half the harvest workers died? What if your family died? What if the local priest died? What if there were not enough people left to bury the dead? The Black Death was not just a medical disaster, it was a social disaster. Everything depended on people: food, labor, trade, religion, family, protection, trust. And when people died in huge numbers, the world itself felt unstable. If you survived, you might walk through streets where doors were open and nobody answered. You might see farms abandoned. You might hear silence where there used to be noise. You might lose friends so quickly that you stop being able to mourn properly. That is another part of survival people forget: mental survival. Could you keep going after watching half your town disappear? Could you sleep while hearing carts moving bodies outside? Could you eat while wondering if you were already infected? Could you stay calm when every cough made people stare? The Black Death attacked the body, but it also attacked the mind. Fear became part of daily life, and fear changes people. Some became kinder. They cared for the sick, they gave food, they prayed, they buried strangers. Others became cruel. They abandoned family members. They attacked outsiders. They looked for someone to blame. They decided that if death was coming anyway, rules no longer mattered. So, to survive, you would need more than luck. You would need discipline. You would need to avoid panic. You would need to stay away from crowds. You would need food stored. You would need clean water if possible. You would need to keep your living area as clean as medieval conditions allowed. You would need to avoid fleas and rodents as much as you could. You would need to leave infected areas early, but not wander randomly. You would need to find a small, stable community that trusted you. And most importantly, you would need luck, a lot of luck, because even if you made every smart choice, you could still get infected, maybe from a flea, maybe from a person, maybe from clothing, maybe from helping someone you loved, maybe from sleeping in the wrong place, maybe from a decision that seemed harmless at the time. That is the scariest part. The Black Death was not fair. It killed the poor. It killed the rich. It killed children. It killed parents. It killed priests. It killed merchants. It killed people who ran. ran. It killed people who stayed. It killed people who prayed. It killed people who laughed at it. But not everyone died. Millions survived. And if you survived, the world after the plague would be completely different. There would be fewer workers. That meant labor became more valuable. In some places, peasants and workers could demand better wages or better conditions. Land was available. Old systems were shaken. The world had lost so many people that the survivors suddenly mattered in a new way. But that would not feel like victory at first. It would feel like standing in the ruins of your old life. You survived. But your town is quieter. Your family may be smaller. Your churchyard is full. Your memories are filled with faces that are gone. And still, life continues. Fields need planting. Animals need feeding. Bread needs baking. Children need raising. Homes need repairing. The sun still rises. That may be the most haunting part of the Black Death. The world ended for millions of people, but for the survivors, the world kept going. So, could you survive the Black Death? If you were dropped into a crowded medieval city after the plague had already arrived, your chances would be terrible. If you were poor, stuck in close quarters, surrounded by rats, fleas, sickness, and panic, survival would be extremely difficult. If you tried to help everyone without protection, you might die quickly. If you ran too late, you might spread it or carry it with you. But if you had warning, if you left early, if you avoided crowds, if you found a remote place with food, clean water, and trusted people, if you stayed away from infected homes and contaminated goods, if you avoided fleas and rodents as much as possible, and if luck stayed on your side, then maybe you could survive. But you would not survive because you were brave. You would survive because you made the right choices early, because you stayed away from danger before everyone else understood it, because you had help, because you had food, because you were not trapped, and because death, for reasons nobody fully understood at the time, passed over your door. The Black Death was not just a disease. It was a test of every weakness in medieval life. Crowded cities, dirty streets, limited medicine, bad information, fear, poverty, trade routes, war, hunger, and human desperation. It showed how fragile the world could be, and how quickly normal life could collapse. So next time you imagine medieval Europe as castles, knights, and candlelit feasts, remember the darker side. A world where a tiny flea could change history. A world where a healthy person in the morning could be gone by the end of the week. A world where the sound of church bells did not mean celebration. It meant another death, and another, and another. Could you survive the Black Death? Maybe. But only if you understood one thing before almost anyone else did. In a world full of fear, rumours, and death, your best chance was not strength. It was distance, it was timing, it was caution, and it was luck.